I set the box down on the kitchen counter and stood there for a second, just looking at it. It wasn't a big box. Maybe 12 inches wide. Inside was a birthday card my best friend had signed, a watch he'd given me 3 years ago, and a USB drive I'd pulled from his desk the day everything fell apart. I wasn't going to keep any of it. I just needed to see it all in one place before I decided what to do next. My name is Isaac. I'm 34 years old. I work in commercial real estate finance. I own a condo in Charlotte. And up until 8 months ago, I thought I had a best friend. His name was Theo, short for Theodore, which he hated, so no one called him that. We'd been close since our sophomore year of college, the kind of close where you're in each other's weddings, where your families know each other, where you text at 11 p.m. about nothing and it doesn't feel weird. 14 years. That's not a friendship. That's more like a second family. His sister, Mara, became my girlfriend 4 years ago. I know how that sounds. I know people have opinions about dating your best friend's sister. But Theo was the one who introduced us. And he was the one who told me, early on, that he thought we were good together. He said it made him happy. He said we were the two most important people in his life, and it made sense that we'd end up together. I believed him. For a long time, I had no reason not to. Mara and I moved in together about a year and a half into dating. We rented a place in the South End, near a greenway, with a rooftop that got good light in the evenings. We had a routine: farmers market on Saturday mornings, dinner with Theo and his girlfriend at least once a month, long drives out toward the U-Varies on weekends, when neither of us had much going on. It wasn't perfect. Nothing is, but it was ours, and it was good, and I was starting to think about rings. Then one Tuesday in March, I came home from a site visit and found Mara's laptop open on the kitchen table. She'd left in a hurry that morning, some work thing, she'd said. The laptop had gone to sleep but hadn't locked. I wasn't trying to look at anything. I just needed to plug my phone in nearby and I accidentally brushed the trackpad. The screen came back on. There was a message thread open. The name at the top was Theo's. I stood there long enough that the screen should have gone dark again. But it didn't, because I kept moving the trackpad without thinking about it. Just hovering. Just reading. I don't want to quote what I read, I'm not going to. But I will tell you that it wasn't vague, and it wasn't recent. Based on what I was looking at, this had been going on for at least 7 months. Maybe longer. And it wasn't just something that had happened once and they were both dealing with the fallout. They were still in it. Fully. Actively. There was a message from Theo. From that morning. That said, tell him tonight. We need to stop pretending. I put my phone in my pocket. I walked to the bathroom. I sat on the edge of the tub for about 15 minutes. Then I stood up, washed my face and walked back out to the kitchen. I closed the laptop. I made a sandwich. I sat down at the table and ate it. I don't know why I did it that way. I think part of me needed a minute to be completely, totally alone with the information before I let it become real. Because once I started making calls, once I said anything out loud, it would become the kind of thing you can't take back. And I had to be sure I wanted to do what I was already pretty sure I was going to do. I was sure. When Mara got home that evening, I was sitting in the living room with the TV off. She said, "Hey." I said, "Hey." She put her bag down and came and sat across from me. She said, "We need to talk." I said, "I know." She looked surprised by that. She started to say something. I could tell she'd prepared something, worked it out in the car or on the train, or wherever she'd been. But I stopped her. I said, "I already know. I saw the messages this morning." She went quiet. I said, "I'm not going to do this tonight. I need you to go stay somewhere else. I don't care where." She said my name. I said, "Please don't. Just go." She stood up. She said she was sorry. She said she hadn't meant for it to go this far. She said a lot of things that I'm sure were true in the way that convenient things are true. I didn't say anything back. I stayed in my chair until I heard the front door close. Then I called my attorney. Yes, I had an attorney. I'd set one up 2 years earlier when I started working on larger commercial deals. And needed someone I could call. I asked him a few questions about lease agreements and cohabitation rights in North Carolina, and he walked me through what I needed to know. We rented together. Both names on the lease. I would need to either negotiate with her directly or go through the landlord. The next morning, I called the landlord. I explained that I was ending the tenancy, and that I wanted to negotiate a buyout of the remaining lease term. The landlord was a reasonable man. We'd always paid early, and never caused problems. He worked with me. Within 3 days, the lease was mine alone, and Mara's name was off of it. I texted her the news. I told her she had 2 weeks to get her belongings, and that I'd leave a key with the front desk if she came when I wasn't home. I told her there was no need for a long conversation. I told her anything she wanted to say could wait until the practical things were handled. She texted back, "Can we please just talk?" I didn't answer. I blocked her number. I blocked her email. I removed her from every shared account we had, the streaming services, the grocery delivery subscription, the cloud storage folder where we'd been keeping photos. I didn't delete the photos. I moved them to an external drive and put the drive in a drawer. Maybe someday that would matter to me. That day it didn't. Then I called Theo. He picked up on the second ring. I could tell immediately he already knew. His voice had that careful quality, the way someone sounds when they've been waiting for a call they're dreading. I said, "I'm not calling to fight. I just want you to know that I know, and that we're done. I want my name off the camping gear lease that was in both our names for the trip we'd been planning. And I want the deposits back from the Asheville rental we'd booked for July." He said, "Isaac." I said that's all I needed to say. I hung up. I removed him from my contacts, deleted 14 years of texts, blocked his number, his email, his social media. I unfollowed every mutual account that might remind me he existed. I went through my Instagram and quietly removed every photo that had him in it. Not deleted, archived. So they were gone from my profile. But I wasn't being dramatic about it. I just didn't want to look at them. That part took about an hour. Then I made dinner and watched a basketball game. I want to be honest about something here. Because I think a lot of people expect this kind of story to come with a lot of crying, a lot of anger, a lot of sitting on the floor at 2 a.m. And maybe that came later in smaller pieces. But in those first few days, what I mostly felt was clarity, like someone had removed something that had been slightly wrong for a long time, and I hadn't noticed until it was gone. That scared me a little, honestly. About a week later I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The voicemail was from Theo and Mara's mother. I'll call her Mrs. P, because she deserves some privacy even now. She said she'd heard what happened, and she was heartbroken, and she hoped I knew she didn't condone it, and she wanted to have coffee and talk. I texted back from the unknown number, I still had it pulled up, that I appreciated her kindness, and that I wasn't ready to talk to anyone connected to that situation. I thanked her for reaching out. I didn't answer any calls from that number again. Then Theo's college roommate texted me. I'll call him Alec. Good guy mostly. We'd always gotten along. He said he wasn't taking sides, that he just wanted me to know he was there if I needed to talk. I replied once, briefly thanked him and left it at that. I had nothing against Alec. I just didn't have the capacity to manage other people's feelings about my situation. About 3 weeks in, I got an email from a mutual friend, a woman we'd both known since our late 20s. Someone I genuinely liked. She said she'd been talking to Theo, and that she thought if I just heard him out, I might feel differently. She said he was really torn up about it. I responded with 5 words, "Please don't contact me again." I felt bad about that one, briefly. Then I stopped feeling bad. At the 1-month mark, I got a handwritten letter in the mail. From Theo. I recognized his handwriting on the envelope. I stood at my mailbox for about 10 seconds. Then I put the letter in the recycling bin in the mailroom without opening it. I didn't need to read it. Whatever it said, it wasn't going to change the facts. And the facts were simple. For at least 7 months. Possibly longer. My best friend and my girlfriend had been lying to my face. Every dinner. Every trip, every phone call where I'd vented to him about stress at work or plans for the future. He'd sat through all of it knowing what he was doing. There is no letter that fixes that. I did tell one person early on. My older sister, Lee. She's the kind of person who doesn't fill silence unnecessarily, which is exactly what I needed. I told her what happened, and she said, "What do you need from me?" Nothing yet. She said, "Okay." She didn't try to make me talk about my feelings. She didn't suggest I was overreacting. She just occasionally texted to make sure I was eating. Which is the most useful form of love. 3 months out, I ran into a guy I knew from the gym. I'll call him Dale. Who knew both me and Theo through the rec league softball team we'd all been on. He caught me in the parking lot and said, "Hey, whatever happened with you and Theo?" I said we went separate ways. He said, "He seems pretty broken up about it." And I said, "That's between him and whatever choices he made." Dale looked a little confused, but he nodded and left me alone. I want to be clear, I never told our mutual friends what happened. I never announced it anywhere. I didn't go on social media with it. I didn't badmouth Mara or Theo to people we knew. I just stepped back, quietly. Cleanly. I let people draw their own conclusions from my absence. I also made some practical changes. I started looking into buying rather than renting. Because I was tired of the lease situation, and Charlotte's market still had pockets of value if you knew where to look. I'd been conservative about property for a few years, but now it felt like a reasonable time to move. I started working with a buyer's agent, and got pre-approved in April. I also changed my gym because Theo went to the same one, and I didn't need that. I started seeing a therapist. Not because I was falling apart. I genuinely wasn't. But because I'd recommended therapy to other people. Often enough that it felt hypocritical, not to try it when I had something worth processing. Her name was Dr. F. And she had this very calm way of letting a conversation sit without rushing it, which I appreciated. She asked me once, about 6 weeks in, whether I was angry at Theo. I thought about it. I said not really. I think I'm mostly just disappointed in myself for not seeing it. She asked what I meant. I said 14 years is a long time, and I thought I knew someone. And apparently I didn't, not really. And that's on me as much as it's on him. She pushed back on that a little. But she also said something that stayed with me. That sometimes people show you who they are in a single moment more clearly than in 1,000 ordinary days. And what you do with that information is yours to decide. I decided. About 5 months out, a guy I'd met through a commercial property deal. I'll call him Reed. Invited me to a dinner party at his place in Dilworth. I didn't know many people there, which turned out to be exactly what I needed. Clean slate. No shared history with Theo. No awareness of what had happened. No awkward awareness, hanging in the air. I met a woman that night. I'll call her Cass, because she likes her privacy and I want to respect that. She worked in healthcare administration, had recently relocated from Atlanta, and had the kind of directness in conversation that I'd always found more restful than exhausting. We talked for most of the dinner about zoning policy and craft, bourbon, and a documentary we'd both watched about the Appalachian Trail. She was funny. She was sharp. She had absolutely no idea who Theo was, or that any of the previous 5 months had happened. We exchanged numbers. We went for coffee the following Thursday. That was 3 months ago. I'm not going to oversell what it is. It's early, but it's real. And it's clean. And I feel like myself when I'm with her, which is more than I can say for a lot of the time I spent in the previous 4 years. At some point in the last few months, Mara's name stopped coming up in my head automatically when something happened. That's the metric I use, honestly. Not the dramatic stuff. Just, when something good happens at work, or something funny happens in traffic, whose name comes up first. For a long time after everything fell apart, it was still hers out of habit. And then one day it wasn't. I found out through a mutual acquaintance. Someone who didn't know the full story, just mentioned it casually. That Theo and Mara are apparently together now, publicly. That they've been posting about it on Instagram. That some people in our old circle apparently thought I had just drifted away and didn't know there was more to it. I didn't feel much when I heard that. I noted it, I filed it, I moved on. What I did feel, and this is the thing I keep coming back to, was a very quiet kind of vindication. Not because they're together, not because of any outcome for them. But because I acted immediately, and I acted cleanly. And I didn't let 14 years of history convince me to make myself small, in order to preserve a relationship that had already ended. And I didn't spend weeks trying to understand why. Or months hoping someone would explain themselves in a way that would make the math add up differently. The math didn't change. I just removed myself from the equation. I closed the box. I taped it shut. I walked it down to the donation bin 2 floors below my building. The watch was nice enough that someone else would want it. The birthday card. I finally opened it before I put it in the bin. It was from 3 years ago. Theo had written, "Here's to the kind of friendship that doesn't need explaining." He'd underlined "doesn't need explaining." I put it in the bin without reading it twice. Some things don't need explaining. He was right about that, just not in the way he meant. The USB drive I wiped and kept. No reason to throw out a good drive. My pre-approval came through in May. I'm closing on a 2-bedroom in Noda in 3 weeks. The building has a rooftop that gets good light in the evenings, which I didn't plan but didn't mind. Lee is helping me move. Cass said she'd bring food for the first night, so I don't have to cook in a kitchen with no utensils yet. I got a final text from Theo 6 weeks ago. From a number I didn't have blocked because he'd clearly gotten a new one. It said, "I know you don't want to hear from me. I'm not asking for anything. I just hope you're okay." I read it once. I typed nothing back. I added the number to my blocked list. He didn't need me to tell him I was okay. He needed to be able to say he'd tried. Those are different things. I'm more than okay. I'm just not interested in sharing that with someone who spent 14 years earning my trust and 7 months quietly destroying it. There's no cruelty in that. There's no bitterness either. It's just math. Some doors you close, and you lock them, and you don't throw away the key out of anger. You throw it away because you have no intention of going back in.